My name is Aria Johnson. I'm 29 years old, and I thought working through my entire pregnancy would demonstrate my commitment to my company until my boss looked me in the eye and said, "Aria isn't committed to the company." What happened next proved that while I was training my replacement and finishing projects at 39 weeks pregnant to ensure a smooth transition, my supervisor was plotting to fire me one day before my approved maternity leave to avoid paying benefits and violate federal employment law. Before I tell you how one phone call from an employment attorney changed everything, my boss thought he knew about pregnancy discrimination law and how Department of Labor records exposed a termination so illegal it resulted in federal charges. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how 3 words, 500K discrimination case, silenced an entire management team and made them realize they had just committed one of the most expensive employment law violations in company history. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. I work as a marketing specialist at Brookstone Industries, a mid-sized manufacturing company that produces commercial kitchen equipment. I've been with the company for 4 years, building a solid reputation as someone who delivers results, manages client relationships effectively, and contributes to the company's growth and success. My supervisor, David Crane, is a 52-year-old old-school manager who has very traditional views about women in the workplace, particularly regarding pregnancy and motherhood. From day one, David made it clear that he believed women with children were less dedicated employees than their childless counterparts. Women change their priorities when they have babies, David would say during team meetings when discussing long-term projects. You can't count on them to be as focused on their careers. These comments always made me uncomfortable, but as one of only 3 women in our department, I felt that challenging them would harm my career prospects more than help them. When my husband Jake and I decided to start trying for a baby last year, I was concerned about how pregnancy would affect my job security. I had heard stories from other women about facing discrimination and career setbacks after becoming mothers, and I wanted to protect myself as much as possible. I decided to research my company's maternity leave policies and federal employment protections before announcing any pregnancy news. I wanted to understand my rights and ensure I followed all proper procedures for requesting leave. Brookstone Industries offered 12 weeks of unpaid maternity leave under the Family and Medical Leave Act, FMLA, plus the option to use accumulated sick days and vacation time to receive partial pay during the leave period. I had been carefully saving my sick days and vacation time for over 2 years, anticipating the possibility of needing them for maternity leave. By the time I became pregnant, I had accumulated enough paid time off to cover approximately 6 weeks of my maternity leave at full pay. When I confirmed my pregnancy at 8 weeks, Jake and I were thrilled. We had been trying for several months, and we felt ready to become parents. But I was also anxious about telling David and our team about the pregnancy. I knew that David's attitude toward working mothers would likely create challenges for me professionally. I waited until I was 12 weeks pregnant and had passed the first trimester milestone before announcing the pregnancy at work. I wanted to minimize the amount of time David would have to develop concerns about my commitment or make plans that excluded me from important projects. "David, I wanted to let you know that I'm expecting a baby," I told him during a private meeting in his office. "The baby is due in early March, and I'll need to take maternity leave starting around that time." David's immediate response was not congratulatory. "How long will you be out?" he asked with obvious irritation. "I'm planning to take 12 weeks of leave as provided under company policy," I replied. "12 weeks is a long time to be away from critical projects," David said. "Are you sure you need that much time?" "It's the standard maternity leave period," I explained. "I'll use my accumulated sick days and vacation time to maintain my income during the leave." "And you're planning to come back after 12 weeks?" David asked skeptically. "Yes, absolutely," I replied. "I'm committed to my career here and plan to return to work." But David's tone suggested he didn't believe my commitment would survive the realities of new motherhood. Over the next several months, I noticed subtle but concerning changes in how David treated me compared to my colleagues. I was gradually excluded from long-term planning meetings that I had previously participated in. "We'll handle this project while you're out," David would say when I asked about initiatives that were scheduled to continue during my maternity leave. Important client relationships that I had developed were slowly transferred to other team members. "It's better to transition these accounts now rather than wait until the last minute," David explained when I questioned why my responsibilities were being redistributed. New project assignments became less frequent and less significant. We don't want to overload you during your pregnancy, David would say when I asked why I was being passed over for interesting opportunities. The pattern was clear. David was systematically reducing my role and responsibilities under the guise of being considerate about my pregnancy, when in reality, he was preparing to marginalize me professionally. I documented these changes carefully, keeping records of meetings I was excluded from, projects I was removed from, and responsibilities that were transferred to other team members. By my third trimester, I felt like I was being treated as a temporary employee rather than a valued team member who was planning to return after maternity leave. But I continued working diligently, completing all assigned tasks and trying to prove that pregnancy hadn't affected my work quality or dedication. At 36 weeks pregnant, I had a conversation with David about the timing and logistics of my maternity leave. I'm planning to work until March 1st and begin maternity leave on March 2nd, I told him. That gives us 2 weeks to handle any final transitions before the baby is due. Are you sure you can work that close to your due date? David asked. What if the baby comes early? I'll adjust the schedule if necessary, I replied, but I want to work as long as possible to ensure everything is properly transitioned. We'll need to bring in a temporary replacement while you're out, David said. I'll start interviewing candidates. I was pleased that David was planning for coverage during my absence, as it suggested the company was taking my leave seriously and preparing to maintain departmental functions. That sounds good, I said. I'm happy to participate in training the temporary replacement to ensure continuity. We'll handle the training, David replied dismissively. You just focus on wrapping up your current projects. 2 weeks later, David announced that he had hired Jennifer Martinez as a temporary marketing specialist to cover my responsibilities during maternity leave. Jennifer has extensive experience in our industry, David told our team. She'll be working with us for the next few months while Aria is out. I was introduced to Jennifer and began the process of transitioning my projects and client relationships. Jennifer seemed competent and professional, and I felt confident that she would maintain the quality of work our department was known for. But during the training process, I noticed some concerning conversations between David and Jennifer. This could turn into a permanent position if things work out well. I overheard David tell Jennifer during one of their meetings. I'm definitely interested in permanent opportunities, Jennifer replied. I'd love to build a long-term career here. The comment about permanent opportunities troubled me because I had made it clear that I intended to return after maternity leave. Why would David suggest that Jennifer's temporary position could become permanent? I decided to address this directly with David. David, I heard you mention to Jennifer that her position might become permanent, I said during our next one-on-one meeting. I want to confirm that my job will be waiting for me when I return from maternity leave. Of course, David replied, though his tone wasn't entirely convincing. We're just keeping our options open in case circumstances change. What circumstances? I asked. Well, you might decide that you want to stay home with the baby longer than planned, David suggested. Or you might find that balancing work and motherhood is more challenging than you expected. I don't anticipate any changes to my plan to return after 12 weeks, I said firmly. We'll see, David replied noncommittally. That response made me increasingly concerned that David was planning to make my temporary replacement permanent, regardless of my intentions to return to work. My maternity leave was scheduled to begin on Friday, March 2nd. I had worked until the end of Thursday, March 1st, completing final project transitions and ensuring that Jennifer had all the information she needed to handle my responsibilities. I went to bed Thursday night feeling proud that I had worked until the very last day of my pregnancy while maintaining high-quality performance and ensuring a smooth transition for my temporary replacement. Friday morning, March 2nd, I woke up relieved that I could finally focus on resting and preparing for the baby's arrival without worrying about work responsibilities. But at 10 a.m., I received a phone call that shattered my sense of security. Aria, this is David, the caller said. I need to speak with you about some changes to your employment status. What kind of changes? I asked, immediately sensing that something was wrong. We've made the decision to terminate your employment effective immediately, David said without preamble. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. You're firing me? We're ending your employment with the company, David clarified. Jennifer has demonstrated exceptional capabilities during her training period, and we've decided to offer her the permanent position. David, this is the first day of my approved maternity leave, I said, trying to process what was happening. That's correct, David replied, which is why we're handling this transition now. You're firing me on the day my maternity leave was supposed to start. We're making a business decision based on what's best for the company, David said defensively. I was shaking with shock and anger as I realized what David had done. He had waited until the exact day my maternity leave was scheduled to begin before firing me, presumably to avoid paying benefits during my leave period. David, this is pregnancy discrimination, I said. You can't fire someone for taking maternity leave. This has nothing to do with your pregnancy, David replied. This is a performance-based decision about what's best for the department. What performance issues? I demanded. My work quality has been consistently excellent throughout my pregnancy. We feel that Jennifer is a better fit for our current needs, David said vaguely. You're replacing me with my temporary replacement on the first day of my maternity leave, and you're claiming this isn't related to my pregnancy. I'm not going to argue about this, Aria, David said. The decision has been made. What about my health insurance? I asked, suddenly realizing that losing my job meant losing the insurance coverage I needed for childbirth and postpartum care. Your benefits will end at the end of this month, David replied callously. I was 9 months pregnant, scheduled to give birth within the next 2 weeks, and my employer had just fired me and canceled my health insurance. The cruelty and illegality of what David had done was overwhelming. After hanging up the phone, I called Jake at his office to tell him what had happened. They fired you today? Jake asked incredulously. On the day your maternity leave was supposed to start? They said Jennifer is a better fit and they're making her permanent, I explained through tears. Aria, that's obviously illegal, Jake said. You can't fire someone for being pregnant or taking maternity leave. David claims it's not related to my pregnancy, just a business decision, I replied. A business decision to fire someone on the exact day their maternity leave starts? That's not going to hold up legally. Jake was right. What David had done was so obviously illegal that it would be impossible to defend as a legitimate business decision. That afternoon, Jake and I consulted with an employment attorney who specialized in pregnancy discrimination cases. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of pregnancy discrimination I've ever seen, attorney Sarah Martinez told us after reviewing the timeline of events. The company claims it's not related to my pregnancy, I explained. They fired you on the first day of your approved maternity leave and replaced you with your temporary cover, Sarah replied. The timing makes their real motivation obvious. Sarah explained that what David had done violated both the Pregnancy Discrimination Act and the Family and Medical Leave Act. Under federal law, you're entitled to 12 weeks of unpaid leave for childbirth, and your employer cannot retaliate against you for taking that leave, she continued. What are our options? Jake asked. We file complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the Department of Labor, Sarah explained. We also file a lawsuit for wrongful termination, pregnancy discrimination, and violation of federal employment law. What kind of damages are we talking about? I asked. In cases this egregious, damages can include lost wages, benefits, emotional distress, and punitive damages, Sarah replied. Given the clear violations and the company's apparent disregard for federal law, you could be looking at several $100,000 in damages. Several $100,000? I repeated. Pregnancy discrimination cases with this level of obvious retaliation often result in significant financial penalties for employers, Sarah explained. Companies need to understand that firing pregnant women has serious legal consequences. We decided to move forward with the legal action immediately. Sarah filed complaints with federal agencies and prepared a comprehensive lawsuit documenting the pattern of discrimination I had experienced throughout my pregnancy. The strongest evidence in your favor is the timing, Sarah explained. There's no legitimate business reason to fire someone on the exact day their maternity leave begins. The company's actions speak louder than their denials. 1 week later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Despite the joy of her arrival, I was also dealing with the stress of unemployment, lost health insurance, and ongoing legal battles with my former employer. But 2 weeks after the birth, Sarah called with significant news. The Department of Labor has completed their initial investigation, she said. They've determined that Brookstone Industries committed clear violations of federal employment law. What does that mean? I asked. It means the federal government is now pursuing their own case against your former employer, Sarah explained. When the DOL finds violations this obvious, they take enforcement action independently of private lawsuits. What kind of enforcement action? Fines, penalties, and requirements for policy changes, Sarah replied. Plus, federal investigations often motivate companies to settle private lawsuits quickly to avoid additional scrutiny. 1 month later, Sarah received a settlement offer from Brookstone Industries. They want to settle for $500,000, Sarah told me during our phone call. $500,000? I asked in disbelief. They're also offering to reinstate your position when you're ready to return to work, provide full health insurance coverage for your family, and implement company-wide training on pregnancy discrimination law. The settlement offer was far more than I had expected and represented full acknowledgement that the company had violated federal law in firing me. Why are they offering such a large settlement? I asked. Because the alternative is a federal trial where the evidence against them is overwhelming, Sarah explained. They fired you on the first day of maternity leave and replaced you with a temporary worker. No jury would find that acceptable. Plus, Sarah continued, the Department of Labor investigation has uncovered evidence that this isn't the first time David Crane has discriminated against pregnant employees. There's a pattern of behavior that could result in much larger penalties if this goes to trial. We accepted the settlement offer, which included financial damages, job reinstatement, and systemic changes to prevent future discrimination. But the most satisfying part of the resolution came when Sarah informed me about the additional consequences for David personally. David Crane has been terminated by Brookstone Industries, Sarah told me. The company decided that his actions created too much legal liability and violated their commitment to equal employment practices. He was fired? I asked. Effective immediately, Sarah confirmed. The company also had to report the discrimination violations to industry associations and regulatory bodies, which will likely affect David's ability to find similar management positions. 6 months later, I returned to work at Brookstone Industries in my original position, with full benefits and a company that had implemented comprehensive pregnancy discrimination prevention policies. Jennifer Martinez had been moved to a different department when I returned, and she seemed embarrassed about her role in the discrimination scheme. I didn't know David was planning to fire you, she told me during one of our first interactions after my return. I thought I was just providing temporary coverage. I don't blame you, I replied. You were hired to do a job. David is the one who violated federal law. The new management team that replaced David was professional, respectful, and committed to ensuring that no employee would face discrimination based on pregnancy or family status. We want you to know that what happened to you is completely unacceptable, my new supervisor told me. Our company is committed to supporting working parents and complying with all employment laws. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that pregnancy discrimination is not only morally wrong but also extremely expensive for companies that engage in it. David thought he could save money by firing me before my maternity leave began, but his illegal actions cost the company $500,000 in damages, plus additional legal fees, federal penalties, and mandatory policy changes. The woman whose boss said she wasn't committed to the company learned that federal employment law provides strong protections for pregnant workers and that violations of those laws carry severe financial penalties. And the supervisor who thought firing someone on the first day of maternity leave was a clever business decision learned that pregnancy discrimination can end careers and result in federal investigations. Today, I continue working at Brookstone Industries, where I've been promoted twice since returning from maternity leave. My daughter is healthy and happy, and I'm proud that my legal action helped create a more equitable workplace for future parents. The company that tried to avoid paying maternity leave benefits ended up paying 50 times more in legal damages, proving that discrimination is not only wrong but also economically foolish. Sometimes, the most expensive mistakes are the ones that seem designed to save money but actually violate federal law and human decency. Have you ever faced pregnancy discrimination in the workplace? How do you protect your rights when employers try to retaliate against you for starting a family? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about employment law, fighting discrimination, and learning that federal protections for working parents have serious consequences when violated.